Hello, I'm Marie Almer, and welcome back to the Anderson News Network. A lot of crazy things have happened during this past era. The past 2 years, from 1855 to 1857, have been one heck of a time. There was the Bleeding Kansas, the Brooks Summer incident, the Dred Scott case, and the presidential election of James Buchanan versus John C. Fremont and Millard Fillmore. God. Now, here's our first reporter, Gretchen Mower, with the details of the presidential election.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Mower, and here's the scoop. The 1856 presidential election was the 18th election we've ever had. During this election, Democrat James Buchanan defeated Republican nominee John C. Fremont and American Party nominee Millard Fillmore. Buchanan morally opposed slavery, but believed it was protected by the United States Constitution. He won all but one slave state, which are in the South, and 5 free states in the North. Fremont won most of his electoral votes from the free states. Before the start of the Civil War, Buchanan tried to prevent the war, but many of his policies ended up dividing the Union even further. Since Southerners were his political and social friends, and when forced to take sides in the slavery battles, he typically sided with the Southerners' interests. I'm here with the President, James Buchanan. Mr. President, how do you feel the election went for you?
I believe it went well because I was able to win over all the southern states, which was my major goal.
Slavery is a big debate in our country at the moment. As the new leader of our country, what is your opinion on this topic, and what are you willing to do to make a difference?
I honestly oppose slavery, but I do feel it's protected by the U.S. Constitution. I will try to make any changes I feel is right for our country and the people.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. I wish you luck in your future years in office. We now have with us a woman from the North who is very eager to share her opinion. Hello, Christine Cartridge. Pleasure to have you here. I would like to start by asking you your opinion on the most recent election of James Buchanan.
I strongly feel that President Buchanan is a biased guy, not fit to be our president. I truly feel that he will do no help with the biggest issue in our country, slavery. He is too blinded by the Southerners and their views. He can't even see us Northerners' point of view.
Thank you for your strong feelings towards the issue.
And he has way too many political friends and social from the South that a Northern man who should be on our side, but instead he seems to side with Southern interests, which is completely unfair.
Thank you very much, Christine. We will now move on to a much calmer Southern woman who is here to share her feelings with us. Maura Castillo here to speak with us. Hello, Maura.
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. I would love to have your opinion on this recent presidential election.
Of course. I think President Buchanan will do great things. He has come into office with a clear mind and is in the right mindset with slavery. Being from the South, slavery is incredibly necessary. Without slaves, landowners wouldn't be able to produce crops, which is a big necessity.
Thank you for your opinion. How do you feel about the Northerners' point of view with Buchanan becoming president?
Hearing from Christine and Northerners in general, I feel they are being completely unreasonable since his goals are very promising for Northerners and Southerners, regardless of his relationships with certain groups of people.
Thank you, Maura. Back to you, Marie.
Thank you, Gretchen. That interview revealed to us the new and exciting views from the people and the president. Next up here on ANN, we have a rising story, what you may know as the Bleeding Kansas. The major issues and disagreements seen between the Northerners and Southerners has been taken into action today, right here and right now. And we have all the details that everyone wants to know. Here's Rosemary wrapping in with the latest update.
Starting off this segment, we will be talking about the small civil war racking through our country. Bleeding Kansas is a series of violent attacks in the United States between 1851 and 1861, which emerged from a political and ideological debate over the legality of slavery in a proposed state of Kansas. The differences between a plantation owner with slaves compared to a factory owner who pays for their workers is a drastic difference. We will now be interviewing a plantation owner.
This situation is ridiculous. Slavery has been and should be present throughout America. It is our right stated in the Constitution for our freedoms to be preserved regardless of what the rich factory owners believe.
How do you feel about the battles taking place on your home front?
It is extremely unreasonable and completely unjust for them to attack us, especially that by fighting on these lands, they are ruining our crops. They do not realize that the plantations of our livelihoods and what we use to provide coverage and protection for our families.
Thank you for your opinion. We will now move on to the other side with the opinion of a northerner. How do you feel about the situation?
I am absolutely outraged. To show my anger, I'm encouraging all of us to set up our own free state legislature. This will cause two governments in Kansas. President Pierce will only recognize the pro-slavery legislature.
How do you feel about David Atchison, the Missouri senator leading the violence in the South?
He is horrible and offensive. He is the one encouraging Missourians to defend the institution of slavery, even saying to kill the abolitionists. Speaking of that, he even went as far to call us abolitionists tyrants. How rude is that?
Those are extremely strong words. I thank you for your time. We will be interviewing our final figure, John Brown, who is an American abolitionist that had a huge part in advocating to overthrow slavery. Mr. Brown, how did you first get involved in these events?
I first led small groups of volunteers during the Bleeding Kansas crisis, hoping to end slavery. I was extremely unhappy with the pacifism of the abolitionist movement, so I knew we had to start up action and violence. I then killed 5 supporters of slavery and then created forces to fight them even more. Slavery is an outrageous ordeal that I believe should be stopped as soon as possible. I hope my story inspires others to follow in my footsteps and end slavery.
We thank you for your time and actions committed to tell your story. Back to Marie.
That is all we have time for today on this tragic event known as the Bleeding Kansas. Although there are many lost lives, we agree that both these from the North and South have very strong opinions on where the borders of Kansas should be regarding slave and non-slave states. I hope you find these segments intriguing and informative. This is Marie Almer, signing off.